And I want to share it in Sally's words, which is the teaching of holy seduction, the teaching of becoming insane with love, the teaching of love that's not held by the conventional categories of loving, but actually points to a deeper truth and a deeper reality. And I want to just introduce one principle of Tantra, and then I want to look at Sally's texts. And the principle of Tantra is the principle of non-rejection. Tantra means to expand. Tantra means to liberate. And Tantra also means to weave. So I'm expanding. I'm taking God out of the temple, out of the conventional, out of the appropriate, out of the politically correct, so I can actually experience liberation. And liberation is where I can actually trust myself. I can trust my body. I can trust my desire. I can trust my passion. Can you believe, my friends, that it's been a year since Sally died? It's kind of shocking, right? It's been a year since Sally died, Sally Kempton. And we're here for the very first time to, I mean, the words don't even make sense, right? To have a memorial service for Sally, right? The words Sally and memorial service don't go together well, right? Sally's alive. And what is the nature of a memorial service? It's to recover memory. That's what memorial means, right? Right? It's to recover memory. And we want to recover the memory of the past, not in a mechanical, historical way, but in the sense of history. His story, her story. We want to capture something of her story. The job of memorial is eulogy, and the job of the eulogist is not to whitewash, not to paint in pretty costumes, not to parade the soul of the one who has passed in politically correct forms. The job of the eulogist, the hesped it's called, H-E-S-P-E-D, the hesped, the job of the eulogist is to liberate the person who has passed from loneliness. The job of the eulogist is to liberate the person who has passed, the beloved, from loneliness. And the job of the eulogist is to ask forgiveness, right? We ask forgiveness for not having recognized you when you were here. There's a beautiful text in Jeremiah which points to this truth. And it's Merachok Adonai Nir Ali. God has appeared to me from afar, from a distance. That is to say, when she's right in front of me, I can't see her. It's only when she's far that we begin to see her. When she's right in front of me, then we exchange words and it's sweet and it's good. But we don't quite see her. And now, the chance that we could exchange words, oh my God, we would give everything for, wouldn't we? To be able to exchange words one more time, to speak together one more time, to feel our Sally one more time. We just had the board conclave. Sally participated in every single board conclave we did since 2009. She was one of the co-founders of the center in its originating vision as the Center for World Spirituality, and was with us as we became Center for Integral Wisdom, because we wanted to incorporate wisdom in the title. Then gradually we evolved into the Center for World Philosophy and Religion. But it's the same vision, the vision of articulating a world religion as a context for our diversity. And Sally was profoundly religious. She's a profoundly religious person, even as she was of this world entirely. And even as she wanted desperately to transcend the world and to merge ecstatically bliss into the utter delight and erotic truth of reality. You know, Sally's password was bliss freak. That was the password, right, for many of her passcodes, right, to that which was most important, whether it was the internet at her house or her computer. Bliss freak, right? Sally was interested in bliss. And so we want to recover our memory of Sally. Sally, we want to turn to you today, and we want to, not as your students, because our relationship, yours and mine, was we were the most beloved and dear friends, right? A brother and sister in the Dharma, beloved wholemates in the Dharma, if you will, or that wasn't a term we used. Deep, profound on the inside of the inside. Achoti yonati tamati, right? My beloved sister. And so I turn to you, Sally, as beloved brother, beloved visioning partner, beloved study partner, right? The many and beautiful meanings of beloved, and we should all be beloved to each other. And I turn to you as friend, as dear and wondrous friend. And we turn to you here in the community of the center, the spiritual community of the center, the think tank, the source code changing vision, one mountain, many paths, the great library, the mystery schools, the standing in this time between worlds and time between stories. And we turn to you, Sally, not as your student community. You have a very important student community that your books and your writings and your meditations speak to. And I'm sure they did some form of memorial, which is beautiful. So we're bowing to that world, and we're recognizing the beauty of the thousands and tens of thousands of students you have around the world in your student community. And that's not what this conversation's about. This is about Sally, our friend, Sally, who was the very fabric of the center. She was, in some sense, part of the space in which the center arose. Is that a good way to say it, KK? Right? Sally was part of the space in which the center arose. Zach, right? You know that, right? Claire, right? You know that, right? Shahati, right? Terry, you know that. How many times did Sally sit in your living room? Peter Fikowski, you know that, Peter, right? You, Sally, and I sat right near your house just a couple of years ago, and what an insanely delightful 3 hours we had, kind of just grounding together. Lori Galper, and Lori, you know that. All of us know it. Sally was our friend, and we're turning to you, Sally, to liberate you from loneliness, to recognize you, to share you. And specifically, what we want to talk about today is not exactly our relationship to you, although some of that will come up, but that's not really what it's about. It's certainly not about, Sally, you're in my relationship, our joy and our delight, right? And the many, 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 many years of depth that we had together. And I was crazy privileged, Sally, love, to call you every day, right? I built my day around being able to call you every day, which we did for, a decade plus, right? And, KK would say to me, kind of at a certain moment of the day, have you called Sally? And we held that together. It was a precious joy of ours. But it's not about that. It's not about unpacking that relationship either, right? We're coming as the eulogist to liberate something of your essence from loneliness, and to liberate something of your teaching from loneliness, right? To share some dimension of you that is radical and potent and needed and gorgeous. And so what I'd like to do, and we're going to do it in a short amount of time, I want to finish, fairly close to on time today. So I would like to try and do this if we can, in 2 stages, if that works for everyone. Okay. And this is so wildly important because Sally was the ground of so much that was revealed and disclosed, and so much that was in the esoteric, right? In the holy esoteric places that were the very weave of the core fabric, the core air, right? The oxygen, the breath that we all breathed together in this mystical society, in this revolution, right? In this think tank, in this band of outrageous lovers. So I'd like to do this, if we can, in 2 stages. So one is I want to share with everyone a video that Shahati made about Sally that we played last year at the memorial. I'm going to share that video. I'm going to share the short version of it, Krista, and maybe just a picture. Maybe we'll just start with just a picture and then with the video. And then I want to do a short eulogy. But in the eulogy, I'm not going to use my words. I'm going to use Sally's words. And I'm going to pick one dimension of Sally's teaching, the teaching of Krishna and Radha, the great Krishna and Radha teaching, which really takes root in the early Vedas of Hinduism, and then around the 1300s becomes far more prominent, at the exact same time in Hebrew wisdom that the Zohar emerges. So around the same time, you have these 2 teachings emerging, which is the Zohar, the Book of Radiance, and the Krishna Radha teaching. And then the Krishna Radha teaching, which is about, and we'll talk about what the teaching is, but it's about the 2 beloveds, Krishna and Radha. That teaching then flowers over 300-400 years and really kind of explodes in the 16th century, much like the Zohar in the Hebrew wisdom side of things explodes in the 16th century and the teachings of Luria. So you have this teaching. It's this teaching about Eros. It's this teaching about what it means to be a lover, but to be a lover not in the narrow sense, but in what I would call the outrageous love sense. And I was often at Sally's house when these chapters were written. They were written in a series of essays called Awakening Shakti. And we went back and forth on these essays, and you'll feel in Sally's writing, many of our conversations will be clear, right, in the writing, but But I'd like to share and liberate Sally from loneliness, liberate her teaching into some dimension of it that's not quite fully grasped or understood, a teaching that lived in the space between us, but actually moves through, and Sally's writing her own very unique structures. And Sally and I kind of engaged this teaching probably for 5 years at Esalen, where we taught like 5 years in a row seminars at Esalen, kind of in this vein. But it moves through the Krishna and Radha teaching. And so my entire eulogy today will be not my words, but Sally's words, right? To weave together her teaching, both to transmit it, but also to share Sally, right? To share this dimension, this glimpse into what moved her heart and what was this being named Salliness. Hi, Sally. I apologize if I'm not getting this exactly right. I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best, love, and we miss you, all of us. We miss you insanely. We miss you insanely. You are beyond precious. And, you know, about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, they sprinkled your ashes. I don't even know what that means, that you have ashes, right? I can see you in front of me. Do you have, Krista, a picture? We just found a picture. It's a beautiful picture, right? Because who can feel that? Who can feel that? That's Sally. I just wanted to share that for a second. Like, oh my God, right? Right? Can you feel her? Can you feel that just utter delight in being alive? Right? Just the utter, that's bliss freak, right? Who can feel that, right? That's bliss freak, right? Like, oh my God, right? There she is. It's a picture that's never been shown in public, right? That just appeared the other day. I don't even know where it appeared from, but it's just like, right? That's Sally. That's a direct transmission of Sally. And this picture must be from, I don't know, 2008, something like that, you know, somewhere in that range, right? Like, oh my God, there's Sally. Okay, there's Sally. And it's different. If it's different than the pictures of her in the New York Times and, you know, the pictures shared, you know, the places that I wanted just to give the transmission of this picture, right? And just feel the joy. Just feel the joy, right? The utter joy, right? The moment of bliss, right? Like, oh my God. Okay, so we're going to go into, we're just going to kind of feel something of Sally's life. And then we're going to go into Sally's words herself. And I want to ask everyone to, if you can, to hold the space for us, because this is one of the very fabrics of the center. You know, Barb Marks Hubbard, you know, held a piece of the center in a critical way, right? Sally, right, held a piece of the center in a critical way, right? And today and I'm talking now about the feminine, right? There's a group of senior feminine teachers and lineage holders, right, who are now today, right, holding the center, right, you know, in a critical way, right? So the fabric of the feminine teacher, of feminine power, right? And I'm using the word particularly power, right? Shakti, right? The feminine quality of Shakti, of radical aliveness, is in Kashmir Shaivism, Sally's root tradition, a quality of power. That's the word that's actually accurate. Shiva is pure consciousness, right? The masculine or the line quality is pure consciousness. And Shakti is energy, but it's power, right? And pure consciousness and power, Shiva and Shakti, the line and the circle meet, right? And then they become something new. As we said in 2015, right, in mystery school, right, the line and the circle become the spiral, right? Something new emerges. There's a Heros Gammas, there's a new emergent. And Sally was very much, right, the power of bliss merged with a deep, profound consciousness. Sally meditated generally several hours a day, kind of deep on the inside of the inside for, you know, for 40 years, 50 years. 40 years. Right? And so if you kind of look, Vayu einecha ro'ot et marecha, let our eyes see our beloveds. Right? So just take a look at Sally. Just see the bliss there. It's the bliss of years of practice. Right? And we're here kind of in this brother-sister place, just filled with that joy. Right? Filled with that joy. And we can be outrageous lovers, right? In other words, we can love each other outrageously beyond the classical structures. We all love. I remember there was a certain moment that John Mackey, turned to me in the middle of an event we did called Success 3.0. And we were deep in this moment. And John said, I love you madly. We get to love each other madly. Right? Our love lists are too short. Let's love each other madly. Let's love each other outrageously. Let's love each other, right, in this holiest way. And it's all rooted, it's all held, right, by the love of Krishna and Radha. So let's take a look at this clip, this beautiful clip that Shahati prepared about Sally. And then we're going to do eulogy with Sally's words. Okay, here we go. Take us inside. El Mahale Rachamim Ishochen Mameromi El Mahale Rachamim Ishochen Mameromi Amtse Menucha Nechona Sally Kempton Tachat Kanfe Ashchina.
If my words did glow with the gold of sunshine, and my tunes were played on the harp unstrung, would you hear my voice come through the music? Would you hold it near as it were your own? It's a hand-me-down. The thoughts are broken. Perhaps they're better.
I would like to introduce now two ladies who I'm sure, well, I know everyone is aware by this time that there are a lot of women in this country who feel that they're being pushed around, and they have become very vocal. They call themselves the Women's Liberation Movement, and we have two representatives from that movement here tonight. They're both writers. Susan Brown Miller had a piece in the Sunday Times a couple of weeks back, and Sally Kempton is the other lady, and I would like you to meet those two ladies. Maybe we can find out what the women are all upset about. Will you welcome them, please? Are you Sally?
Yes.
Yes. Well, you've brought cigarettes. Could I not light it for you?
No.
Okay. Just a little joke, you see.
Would you like to not light it for me?
Is it true that you travel in pairs for some reason, or is this just a...
There is a political reason why we came tonight together.
A political reason?
Yes.
Oh, well, you want to leap right into that?
Sure. The Women's Liberation Movement says sisterhood is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And that means women together.
Well, what is it you want done, if you could wave a magic wand now, that would release you from the yoke of this oppression that you all talk about? What would do it quickly? Is it a whole change of attitude in the
a change
Western
in-
world?
Yeah. It's a change in education, really. Women are brought up in really hundreds of ways. I mean, from the time they're 2 and 3 years old, to be cute and coquettish and intellectually unserious, to seduce people instead of saying what they want. Mm-hmm. I think it would be, what we would really like is for there to be no necessity for seduction in the world at all. And particularly for there to be no necessity for women to seduce men to get what they want.
In terms of degrading and wearing a bunny tail, the parallel that's usually made is, why don't you create a women's magazine with nude men? Because there's some kind of a notion that, taking the clothes off is a degrading concept.
Hey, Helen Gurley Brown wants to put a man in Cosmopolitan. What do you think of that and her?
Well, that's another symptom of the same decadent problem, right?
Is she just a female half?
Well, I don't know. I'm sort of... No, she's not. I mean, Helen Gurley Brown, at least, was the first person who ever said that it was okay for a woman to be single up into her 40s and 50s. One has to give her that. But she runs a magazine for women who want to know how to get men, just as Mr. Hefner runs a magazine for men who want to seduce women. And we don't think that's a proper, that's a sole relationship between men and women, or even certainly not the most important one. And maybe that's the reason that all these things about male impotence and stuff like that you and Dr. May were talking about earlier has been going on.
Now, some of you are really against marriage completely.
Yes. Yeah, I think most of us feel that the marriage laws are very discriminatory against women.
Except in California with alimony, apparently.
Well,
Would you accept alimony if you were divorced?
no.
You wouldn't?
But I would think that a woman who spent her whole life being a housewife and mother should. I think that in such cases, alimony is really the price that men pay for women's oppression.
How do you explain the Margaret Chase Smiths and the Helen Gurley Browns and the Bess Meyersons and who have somehow fought through the system and gotten
society
there?
always allows a few to get through. There are always loopholes.
But you speak as if there were a conspiracy. They say, let's let these few through, and then these other women will get back in their place.
I really do.
But not a conscious one. You don't think that I go around consciously oppressing women,
I don't
do you?
know if you do. I don't think so, watching your show. I really wouldn't think. You seem to like intelligent women, and you never seem to be afraid to have strong women on your show. I mean, you've had marvelous intellectual discussions with Beverly Sills, Shirley Chisholm.
Yeah, but that's because I'm weak and like to be dominated.
You don't believe that. No, you're not. No, you're confident of your masculinity. Right?
Say that again.
I'll say that louder, right? You're confident of your masculinity.
I wanted to get that out, so that I'll hear it. Gee, we need another show on this. I'm afraid we have opened so many cans of worms here. I wish we could get to them. That isn't aimed at any of my guests. This turned into a roast Hefner evening. I'm sorry about that.
Dick, I'm going to
You'll get
talk about that later.
My name is Sally Kempton. We're in my house in Carmel Valley, California. I came to the practice after having a kind of a radical awakening, which I've talked about before, but I'll tell you the full story. It was the early 1970s. I was in my 20s. I was sitting in my living room with my then boyfriend. We had just taken a psychedelic drug. I can't remember if it was acid or psilocybin, but one of those medicine plants. And we were listening to a record by the Grateful Dead. I was listening to the song "Ripple," which some of you may know. Ripple in still waters. The line that really activated me was, "If I knew the way, I would take you home." And as I was listening to those words, suddenly my awareness opened, and I recognized, I realized, I experienced that there was nothing but love. That all the complexities and the suffering and the pain and the mental stuff that I was concerned with as a downtown New York journalist just dissolved, and all I could see was love, and it was, as you can imagine, ecstatic. So I turned to my boyfriend and I said, "Oh my God, there's nothing but love." And he said, "Haven't you ever taken acid before?" So it was, I tell that story because he was somebody who'd taken acid a lot. I hadn't so much. But I knew that this was not about the drug. This was reality. And the next day, I was a writer, I was a journalist, and I had a fairly substantial contract to write a novel at the time. And I sat down at my typewriter, starting to work on my book, which was all about pain and relationships and, you know, all the difficulties between men and women. And I wrote, what am I going to do? I was supposed to be a novelist of pain, and now I realize the truth is ecstasy.
Still water, when there is no pebble tossed, nor wind to blow, reach out your hand. If your cup be empty, if your cup is full, may it be again, let it be known. There is a fountain that was not made by the hands of men. There is a road, no simple highway between the dawn and the dark of night. And if
Goddess is hidden. The feminine aspect of consciousness has always been hidden. You know, she acts through bodies. She acts through this, you know, the specific forms of this universe, and she's not seen. She's not known. And yet, the greatest sages, the great non-dual sages like Ramana Maharshi and Abhinavagupta, Shankaracharya, Ramakrishna, many, of course, of the great Christian non-dual mystics were secret worshippers of consciousness of the divine as mother, as goddess, undoubtedly because of their inner experience. And very often they loved goddess in secret. That force of becoming that becomes all this and also becomes every state of mind, that force is feminine. That force is a frequency of vibration that we recognize the more deeply we go into it as a fundamentally feminine force, a force of beauty, a force of wholeness, a force that you know actually becomes pregnant with the world, delivers the world, and then nourishes the world.
And if you go, no one may follow. That path is for your steps alone.
Let's sit in a comfortable upright posture. Let's align the body through the breath. And let's ask for the goddess to be present in the form she wants to be present for you now. So as your awareness focuses on the breath, imagine yourself in a place where you feel safe, where you feel inspired, and where you feel a sense of the sacred. It could be a temple. It could be a garden. It could be a grove of redwoods. It could be a moonlight beach. And sitting there, notice your surroundings and begin now to call on the sacred feminine power, the energy and love of the Divine Mother. But this time you're not going to try to invoke her in any specific form. Instead, you're going to open yourself to the subtle energy of Shakti, to the Divine Mother energy as she wants to manifest for you now in this moment. She may take a form, but she may also appear to you as a mass of golden light, of a sun, or simply as a feeling of presence. Sit with the sense that you're sitting in the presence of the Divine Feminine, the Great Mother, the one who embraces you. And as you become aware of the presence of this Divine Feminine energy, this being, you may want to call her by name, or even to silently repeat the ancient mantra of the Divine Mother, Ma. Ma. Ma is her name in every language. Consider that this syllable Ma contains the yearning and the love of countless practitioners who received the grace of the Divine Feminine as Mother. Let yourself be present with the radiance of this being who incarnates the divine. Recognize that the Divine Mother longs to help you open to your highest self, to recognize yourself as love. And as if the Great Mother has placed her hand on your head, feel that from her hand flows a stream of golden light, a living radiance, a loving effulgence that flows down from her hand on the crown of your head, down through your face, through your brain, bathing your neck and shoulders in radiant golden light, the light of the love of the Divine Mother. Let yourself open to receive her light as it pours through your heart, as it flows through your lungs and the inner organs of your body, as it enters your bones, and you feel this light flowing through your bloodstream, down and deep into your pelvis, healing the inner wounds, healing the pain, the holding back, the feelings of separation, flowing through your legs, your knees, down into your ankles and feet. Sit in the presence of the Divine Mother, feeling her hand upon your head, and the golden radiance of her loving presence flowing through your body as the breath moves by her grace.
Oh, so long, Marianne. It's time that we began to laugh and cry and cry and laugh about it all. Oh, you are really such a pretty one. I see you've gone and changed your name again. And just when I climb this whole mountainside to wash my eyelids in the rain, oh, so long, Marianne, and we began to laugh and cry and laugh about it all.
Oh, right. Wow. And who could feel that? Who could feel that? So I want to try and share with you in this eulogy, this last part, Sally, in her own words, but the more, and this is part of the liberation from loneliness that we're talking about, Sally, in her own words, but the more radical part of Sally, right? What she understood, and Sally was nuanced and complex, and I introduced Sally to one of my dearest friends that I am actually devastated that I haven't talked about and talked to. I haven't talked to in way, way too long. My dear friend, Fred Jealous. So I had the privilege of introducing Sally and Fred, who had, I was never there, so who knows what they talked about, but wonderful, nuanced conversations about politics and subtlety and art and human nature and psychology. And, Sally knew all the kings and queens of England and all of the subtle political plays and, right. In other words, so Sally was, and if Fred's with us, Sally, Fred knew Sally's nuance, her depth, right. And many people did. Right. She was unimaginably wide. She could talk to you about the currency fluctuations in China, right, and how they would affect American politics, et cetera, et cetera. But at her core, at her very core, Sally was what, it's my word, not Sally. Sally is what I would call an erotic mystic. She was a mad lover of reality. And notice, and it was hard won. It wasn't cheap grace. It wasn't, as she said in the story in, the film, it was like, oh, haven't you ever taken acid before? And then Sally said, no, but it wasn't acid. I actually realized that love, or what we would call Eros, was actually the true nature of reality. And she says, at some point I realized, the public role for me was to be a novelist of pain, but how can I be a novelist of pain when I realized the truth is ecstasy? And it was a long, hard-won path. Sally says in the Dick Cavett clip where Sally and Susan Brownmiller are debating Hugh Hefner, the founder of Playboy, on the Dick Cavett show, and one of the epic moments of second wave feminism, right, in 1972. And Sally says, I don't want to have anything to do with the world. We shouldn't have seducing in the world. There should be no necessity for seduction in the world. And she says, the thing we can say good about Helen Gurley Brown is that she legitimated women not getting married into their 40s, into their 50s. And of course, Sally lived, most of her life, other than a short marriage, alone. And Sally chose that path, but it wasn't a loveless path. It was a path in which the love of any one single person, as beautiful as that was and needed to be, wasn't enough. Sally actually shifted, right, to a place in which she realized that the problem with the seducing in the world was not that there should be a world without seduction, but that actually seduction had become too limited, right? It had lost its radiance. It had lost its beauty. Seduction became unholy seduction, meaning the world is really materialist. And seduction is basically a form of manipulation where I get someone to break their appropriate boundary for the sake of my greed. That's the exile of seduction. But what Sally was going to come to realize at her very core and at the very heart of her teaching is that all of reality is great seduction. All of reality is a great seduction, but it's a holy seduction where I invite people, where people are invited, where she invites us to break the boundary of our contraction for the sake of our own deepest need. And our deepest need is the experience of radical aliveness, the experience of radical loving, not just self-love, right? Not the kind of, human potential movement emphasis on self-love. Self-love is critical. But self-love is in this larger matrix of a world, in the language of Solomon, whose insides are lined with love, and it's all about seduction. We're always seducing each other. We're always falling in love with each other. And so Sally taught, but only esoterically, right? There's a chapter about it in one of her books, but it was the essence of her teaching that she almost never talked about. She usually talked about the Divine Mother, which is what she talked about in the meditation that you heard. But there was another teaching. It's that teaching that I want to share with you. And I want to share it in Sally's words, which is the teaching of holy seduction, the teaching of becoming insane with love, the teaching of love that's not held by the conventional categories of loving, but actually points to a deeper truth and a deeper reality. And I want to just introduce one principle of Tantra, and then I want to look at Sally's texts. And the principle of Tantra is the principle of non-rejection. Right? Tantra is non-rejection. Tantra is a particular path, and it's a path that exists as deep in Hinduism, but there's also a Kabbalistic Tantra. There's also a kind of Christian Tantra. There's a Buddhist Tantra. Tantra, what all of the Tantra traditions share in common, Tantra means to expand. Tantra means to liberate. Tan, the word tan, means to expand. Tantra means to liberate. And it also means, Tantra also means to weave. So I'm expanding. I'm taking God out of the temple, out of the conventional. I'm taking God and Goddess out of the conventional, out of the temple, out of the appropriate, out of the politically correct, so I can actually experience liberation. And liberation is where I can actually trust myself. I can trust my body. I can trust my desire. I can trust my passion. And I know that passion and that desire is actually expressing, when I clarify it, right? I trust the deepest truth that emerges. So I clarify my desire, I clarify my passion, but I clarify my passion and desire, not my politically correct desire and passion, but my love sickness. I'm sick with love, right? I'm the great Vida Madhava, right? Vida Madhava, which I'm undoubtedly pronouncing wrong, which writes, "Who would cease to tell of that quintessence of erotic mood, save one speechless utterly with ecstasy?" All right, that's the verse that Sally decided to translate right? And it's about Radha. So from now on, it's going to be Sally talking. Have you ever been so wildly in love that you could think of nothing but your lover? Has your heart ever ached with longing for another person or even for an unknown beloved? Have you felt like separation from your lover is being torn apart from your own soul? And she publishes this in 2013. Have you felt ecstatic with your lover's arms around you, in despair when your lover misses a day and doesn't call? Has your lover sometimes appeared so luminously beautiful, even when he leaves his towel on the bathroom floor, that you feel an almost worshipful adoration for him? Or have you ever had passionate feelings for the divine or for an unknown beloved? An unknown beloved that perhaps you can only meet in your soul. So if you recognize those feelings, then you know the path of Radha. That's what it means to love like Radha. And Radha is the goddess of lovers, right? Radha is the goddess of desperate romantics. She's the beloved mistress of the youthful god Krishna. And Radha's passionate erotic drama, right, is the core of divine worship. So stay with me. There's Radha energy. The Radha energy is present whenever there's a passionate love and the wish to become one with the beloved. And sometimes she manifests, you get glimmerings of Radha. And again, this is all Sally talking, right? You get glimmers of Radha in a teenager's romantic fantasies, or in the delicious experience, which we're told by psychology should be pathologized, right? But in the there's an actual experience of erotic truth and delight, right? When you actually, you want to be just simply immersed in a beloved other. And she might show up as a reckless compulsion, which sometimes you should follow and sometimes you shouldn't. But it's that compulsion to follow your erotic impulse in its clarified truth. I'm not talking about not being irresponsible in the sense of, of superficial. We're talking about a clarified. The word that I would add here is clarified. When you clarify and you identify your erotic impulse and you follow it, despite, Sally says, all reason and practicality. Right? Radha is a divine force. She's deeper than any of these human stirrings, but these human stirrings point to this divine force. Right? Radha uncovers the burning heart of universal Eros, the radical life force energy that creates life's sweetness. And that lives as the inside of your desire for a human lover. That the desire for a human lover is an incarnation of this deeper erotic yearning. Radha's energy awakens within you when she transforms a love interest into a wildly personal love affair with the beloved or the inner beloved. She's one of the secret Shaktis who transmutes ordinary desire into the longing and passion which fuels both personal love and the spiritual journey itself. This is the Radha energy, and it's Teresa of Avila held it, and John on the Cross, and Teresa of Lisieux, who I can't pronounce, and Mirabai, right, and Sufi mystics, and Shimon Bar Yochai. And the Radha energy is imprinted in our heart, right, and in our soul. In the original path, the original stories of Krishna's early life, and again, this is Sally talking, and I'm reading from her essay on Krishna in Radha. In the original stories of Krishna's early life, Radha appears only as a nameless cowherd girl, one of the group of the young god Krishna's teenage companions and lovers, known as the gopis, the cowgirls. She only emerges as a full-fledged goddess in the 13th century. And let's talk a little bit about the story of Radha. The story of Radha, right? Radha, who's in love with Krishna. The key insight is that any human emotion, if you follow it to its root, is turned and an expression of the mad love for the divine. The way I would say it would be something like, whenever you're on your knees in mad love, you're always on your knees before she. It's one of Sally's favorite, right, ways of expressing this. Rama and Krishna, Radha and Krishna's lives imply a radical possibility, right? That any human being can be approached as a form of the divine and can be loved with mad devotion. And we bring it into our relationship. I can have a Krishna Radha relationship with a teacher. I can have a Krishna Radha relationship with myself. I can have a Krishna Radha relationship with a very close friend in which there's nothing that can't be spoken. It's not like, oh, this is appropriate to speak, this is not. No, we speak everything, right? We whisper sweet nothings into each other's ears, right? We are passionately in love, and we're madly in love, right? Love mad, right? Love mad. And anyone who's been drawn to this circle of outrageous lovers, this think tank that we are, knows what we mean when we say, let's love madly. Right? KK and I started using the word love mad when we wrote outrageous love letters. And Sally was ecstatic because she said, outrageous love letters, that's the energy, right? That's the energy, right, of Radha. That's what outrageous love letters are. They're the energy of Radha. You know, Chandidas is a poet, right, in the Hindu tradition, who practices the most radical form of bhakti, and he writes exquisite devotional verses to a teenage prostitute whom he worshipped as the goddess, right? And he describes his approach to Tantra, right, as the sahaja path, the natural path, right? Communing with the divine through the most intense and wild of natural human love. Ramakrishna, right, was once asked by a woman devotee, right, who complained that she couldn't feel love for God. And so Ramakrishna asked her, so who do you love? Right? And she said, well, I adore my baby nephew. And Ramakrishna said to her, love him as Krishna, right? In other words, love Krishna in whatever way comes naturally, as a child, a youth, a friend, or a teacher, right? Any form of radical love of this devotional, wild nature, ecstatic, erotic, can trigger the flow of bliss, which, if you cultivate the flow, will melt you into the highest form of realization, of bliss fuck realization, right? It's the realization of the bliss fuck of reality, the bliss eros of reality. It's what Meister Eckhart means when he says reality is kissing in every moment. Right? It's the eros that animates everything all the way up and all the way down. And I'm mixing my words with Sally. So I'm going to go back to Sally. This was the path. This is Sally speaking of the erotic romantic lover, the path that's called Parakriya Bhakti. Right? And the Parakriya Bhakti writers believed that the obsession that a lover feels, that a woman feels for her paramour, that her paramour feels for her, that radical, obsessed love can transform the heart in a way, I'm quoting Sally, that no ordinary, respectable love can ever do. Can you hear that sentence? Right? The Bhakti writers of Parakriya Bhakti believed that that obsession that a woman feels for her paramour, that a man feels for his beloved of the Krishna Radha kind, can transform the heart in a way that no ordinary respectable love can ever do. It's the greatest form of love, they argued, both because it's dangerous. I'm quoting Sally, both because it's dangerous, it can never be taken for granted. And remember that love, and again, I'm reading Sally, love outside of marriage, especially in those pre-modern days, could ruin your life. Your love could be discovered, you could be ostracized for it, or you could be even killed. At the very least, you risk heartbreak. at the hands of a lover who had no legal obligation to go on loving you. And then to direct such love towards the divine was to court ego dissolution and to risk your very life, right? As happened to the poet queen, Mirabai. It opens you, right, to the highest sweetness. And at the same time, and again, I'm quoting Sally, real love risks everything. Real love risks everything. Sally's voice continues. Radha is a young woman growing up in the cowherd village of Raja. Her lover Krishna has been sent there as a baby to escape death at the hands of his uncle, who had sworn to kill him. So Krishna is raised among the village children, and he and Radha are childhood playmates. But as they grow, Radha falls helplessly in love with Krishna. According to Indian myth, Krishna is the masculine incarnation of the divine's irresistible beauty, allure, and love. Right? Krishna embodies the power of divine allurement, the radical bliss that turns a lover's heart towards mystical union. And Krishna, right? The Krishna energy, right? The Krishna energy, which is the Kristeva energy, right? Kristeva, right? That's that Jules Kristeva, right? Alludes to and points to. Krishna is distracting, right? To the point of addiction. And all of the Krishna energy, right? Right? The Krishna energy, right? Right? All hold this, right? Addiction, which is a cosmic intoxicant, which draws your attention away from your work, your duties, your very survival. Right? This is the energy of the Krishna, right? In later life, Krishna becomes a king, a statesman. But at this stage, Krishna is pure divine allure, right? It's pure divine allure. Everyone in the town of Vraja adores Christina Krishna, right? 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 It's the same energy. It's Krishna. It's Radha. Everyone has a unique relationship with Krishna, right? Does everyone hear that? So Krishna is this energy of allure. It's this energy of allurement. And everyone loves Krishna, right? Krishna is, right? Does everyone get this? Everyone loves Krishna, right? His mother and the older women of the village, they love him as a son, and they dote on his baby mischief. The cowherd boys love him as a friend and as a ringleader. Their sisters, the cowherd girls, the gopis, are erotically and intensely in love with him. Now, in another situation, this would be scandal, right? This is the stuff of scandal. But because everyone in the village of Raja is part of this magical mystery tour, they're part of this mythic conspiracy to adore this incarnate deity, the conventional rules don't apply, right? The town of Vraja is a band of outrageous lovers, right? The conventional rules don't apply. And one of Krishna's incarnational tasks, in fact, is to exemplify the secret truth that true devotion to God allows you to bypass normal social and religious boundaries, right? That's Sally writing. And I just want to be clear, the energy of Krishna can live in both man and woman, right? Krishna and Radha live in each of us, right? Krishna and Radha, the line and circle that are the Eros Gamos that create the spiral that spirals all galaxies, right? The love that moves the sun and other stars lives in each of us, right? We each of us have the capacity to be Krishna and to be Radha. But Krishna represents, right, the mad distraction of insane love, right, that fills me. And at the root of that insanity, right, Sally, is the ultimate sanity, the ultimate realization, right, the ultimate knowing. And by the way, and I'm back to Sally's writing, so in the magical world of Raja, Krishna's lovers spend their days, and his lovers include his mother, his friends, the gopis, right? They spend their days in ecstasy. Their God is no invisible figure to be reached in prayer, but a living, breathing person. He's audacious, sweet, mischievous, and he also happens to be invincible. All through his child, Krishna keeps casually disposing of the demons sent to assassinate him. In the paintings of Krishna, you see him playing his flute for the longhorned cows surrounded by boys. You see him dancing with the gopi cowherd girls, and you see him with one particular girl, the two of them entwined, embracing, gazing into each other's eyes, and that is Radha. And Radha stands out among this village of Krishna lovers, Vraja, because she is his feminine counterpart, his Shakti. And because she loves Krishna to the point of losing all self-consciousness. She loves Krishna to the point of losing all self-consciousness. See, when it comes to loving the divine, the devotional traditions tell us that the conventional affection isn't enough. Right? You need a radical pathway into the deep heart of reality, which comes only from wild, erotic love, in which I become literally lovesick so that I'm healed and whole. It's only through becoming lovesick that I become healed. And that's the story of Krishna and Radha. Chandidas, right, the poet who we cited earlier, writes, "And now I know that love adheres wholly to its own laws." Chandidas again, "I took no thought for what would be said of me. I abandoned everything." Right? "He takes my clothes away." The Bengali poets write, "I lose my body at his touch." But Radha's passionate attachment to Krishna has its own wound. There's a wound at the heart of it, which is as much, and this is Sally writing, is as much part of her love as the ecstasy, because she cannot ever hold Krishna. Krishna will never be tied down to one lover. He loves Radha, but he loves all the cowgirls. Krishna incarnates the personal face of God, and God is polyamorous. God loves every nation and every person. That's the divine nature. The divine is connected inside and out to every heart. And the Krishna being is to share love and never to confine it just to one person. And so with Krishna, opportunities for heartbreak and jealousy are endless. When he's with her, Radha is lost in bliss. When he's away, she wants to throw herself in the river. Radha lives in the middle of an emotional earthquake. Her state is the reverse of yogic equanimity, but it lives as the greatest path to the divine. One August night, as the moon rises over the river, again, Sally writing, the gopis hear the notes of Krishna's flute. And this is the most famous of the erotic Krishna stories. And it begins when the cowherd girls, the gopis, beg Krishna to dance with them in the forest at night. And smiling his mischievous smile, Krishna tells them, "Yes, we'll dance when the moon is right. But when you hear the sound of my flute, you have to drop everything and come. Whatever you're doing, feeding your child, cooking, serving dinner to your husband, you must come." He's voicing the ultimate demand that the divine makes of the devotional beloved, of the divine devotional lover. Call yourself a lover, then prove it. Don't make love something that you save for your leisure time, convenient. Go for it. Throw yourself away for the sake of love. The Krishna Radha path. And one August night, as the moon rises over the river, the gopis hear the notes of Krishna's flute, lilting through the trees around the village. True to their promise, they put down their babies, they leave their cooking unattended on the fire. Half dressed, they run to the woods where he waits in a clearing by the river. And there, an Indian myth, they begin to dance together. And the dance is known in Indian myth as Raslila, the game of flavor, the sport of delight. And one of the most famous images in Indian art shows Krishna dancing in the midst of the circle of young women. He plays his flute. The women sway and bend, so lost in ecstasy that their clothes are falling off their bodies. And another image, Krishna has multiplied himself so that each of the girls has Krishna in her arms. God belongs to everyone who loves him, as long as you don't hold back. He won't hold back himself. And yet Krishna cannot resist Radha. At one point in the evening, he disappears from the circle, and when the gopis look for him, they find him embracing Radha, the two of them lying on a bed of flowers by the river. Radha's love for Krishna kindles his love for her, and it gives her as much power over him as he has over her, and Radha knows it. Sometimes she's disgusted by his infidelity. She refuses to speak to him, and then Krishna follows her, begging her to relent and embrace him. He demands her full attention. She weeps because she can never have his. Right? Can you feel that? Krishna and Radha never marry. Their time together is heightened by its shortness, tumbled hair, entwined limbs, long kisses, passionate arguments, passionate reconciliation. And in the end, Krishna always leaves Radha. And yet, Krishna always comes back, and he never forgets. Radha's a peasant girl married to another man. She stays behind, and yet as the chariot carries him away, Krishna looks back longingly at Radha. Radha, for her part, goes mad with grief. Krishna, too, is devastated. The Bhakti poets describe how he sees her everywhere he goes. How is it, he asks, that for me, the three worlds have become Radha? But now follow. Radha never forgets. For the rest of her life, she spends her days meditating on Krishna. But in her obsession and grief at being separated from her beloved, something radical begins to happen. Something amazing happens. She begins to see Krishna everywhere. The whole world becomes her beloved, even as she loves Krishna himself most personally. Every leaf in the forest, the cows, the household butter churn, everything becomes for her the form of Krishna. And in the Indian devotional tradition, the state of Radha is called the bliss of the pain of separation. Right? The bliss of the bliss of the pain of separation. It's considered one of the highest spiritual experiences. And when Radha weeps for Krishna, her tears wash away all the veils from the heart of reality itself, and everything for her becomes the form of her beloved. One day, Krishna, who never stops thinking about the people who love him and about Radha, calls his friend Uddhava and asks him to go back to Vraja, to the village, and to see how everyone's doing. And especially, he says, find out how Radha is. She, above all others, holds my heart. And when Uddhava gets to the village, he's shocked to find Radha and her friends walking around like crazy women. They're beautifully adorned, it's true. They're taking care of themselves physically. But it turns out that they're doing all of this because, at least how Uddhava sees it, they seem to live in a fantasy. They walk around caressing the trees and embracing the cows and screaming, Krishna, Krishna. And when they walk from house to house to sell their milk and butter, they call out, buy Krishna, buy Gopala, because it's Krishna Gopala. And Uddhava is a great yogi, a master of asana and meditation. He can't believe his eyes. These women have gone insane. He reasons, I have to do something. So he calls the gopis, the cowherd girls, together and gives them a lecture on yoga. And he says, Krishna loves you all, he says, and in the tone that reasonable people use when talking to children. He sent me to comfort you. Now you should take that great love you have and turn it inside. Sit for meditation. Close your eyes and imagine Krishna in your heart. Do some breath control. Try to still those wandering minds. And Radha and the girls look at Uddhava indulgently because they see he doesn't understand. Oh, Uddhava, says Radha, you just don't get it. Why should we close our eyes when Krishna is all we see? You might have to close your eyes and meditate in order to find God in your dry heart. But we see him with our eyes wide open. Every place we live, we see Krishna. Wow. Wow. Can you feel that, my friend? It's the path of the wound, but all wounds become the wounds of love. And that's the way I would summarize this whole teaching. And some of you might notice that this path of the outrageous lover is the path of Krishna and Radha. It's not reasonable, it's outrageous. It's an unreasonable path. John of the Cross felt and understood this path. He writes, O living flame of love that tenderly wounds my soul in its deepest center. O delightful wound, O gentle hand, O delicate touch that tastes of eternal life and pays every debt. In killing, you change death to life. Right? The path of Krishna and Radha. And feel the insanity of it all. It's what we mean when we talk of mad love. Right? There's a reason why in our community we look at each other and we say, I love you madly. Outrageous love. Because we're talking about the path of Krishna and Radha. It's the liberation of insanity. It's the holy spark at the center of insanity. Do you think that we can address the meta crisis from a kind of dry, desiccated sanity, which dissects the world into materialist forms of causation? No. We can only address the meta crisis as a waiting lover, feeling the pulsing throb and tumescence of reality, and feel her own urgencies and the fields of value that animate her, and find our way into the very impulse of reality itself, identify her plot lines, and tell her true story, and let that new story of value be the strange attractor, which begins to allow us to find a way home. And that's what Ficino does in the Florentine Platonic Academy in the Renaissance, right? In that time between worlds and time between stories. We can only do it as Krishna and Radha. We can only do it when we actually realize that we live in a cosmoerotic universe, not as a mythopoetic statement. Krishna and Radha is not mythopoetry, right? Krishna and Radha is the very fabric of reality itself, right? It's the heart of existence itself. It's what I always mean when we say, right, citing the Bengali mystics of Krishna Radha, right? Love is not mere human sentiment. Love is not merely a social construction. Love is the heart of existence itself. It's radical. Radical means it goes to root. It goes to root. And of course, in the deepest place, the radical and the responsible live together, right? Because there's nothing more responsible and more responsive to reality, and more response-able, capacitates us more to respond, right, to the deepest yearnings of our own holy self than to claim the only true sanity, which lives in the depth of insane love. Insane love is the only true sanity. And we love each other insanely in that unique way that Krishna loves Radha, and those unique personal bonds that are intimate and irreplaceable and irreducible and that live only between two people. And yet, that outrageous love that lives between two people has to participate in the field of outrageous love. And then we have to fall in love, right? Outrageously. Each time in the most right way. Every outrageous love has its own parameters, its own invitation, its own plot line, right? And sometimes we fall in love outrageously with animals, and sometimes we fall in love outrageously with a tree, and sometimes we fall in love outrageously with a friend, right? A true friend, even if we haven't talked to them for a long time. We love each other outrageously, right? We break convention, but not to become pre-conventional. Do you get that? It's not an abandonment. It's not a surface abandonment of responsibility. It's not an abandonment of goodness or of integrity, right? It's the ultimate integrity. It's the highest integrity. And there's room for everyone in the circle of outrageous love, right? Our love lists are too short. We're not going to save our world through mere analysis, although analysis is necessary. We're going to save our world by being outrageously in love with our world. We're going to save the environment by being outrageously in love with the rivers, with the trees, with every species. And ultimately, we're going to save our world by being outrageously in love with each other. We turn the entire world into the field of Krishna and Radha. So now, friends, does everyone understand, right, why Sally was so much at the core and fabric, right, of the center? And how her own Krishna and Radha teaching was the very core of her being, was the very core of her aliveness, right? She was madly in love with a new outfit and with new upholstery, and madly in love with the sacred texts, and madly in love. Madly in love. That's where she lived. She went from appearing on the Dick Cavett show, where she said there's no place for seduction in the world, to realizing that she was rejecting unholy seduction, that actually the only way is the way of holy seduction. We seduce our split off selves into romantic union with ourselves. We seduce each other into the holy union of radical responsibility and radical bliss, where we feel each other and we live alive. And as we live that, we pour it back into you, Sally. We pour it back into you, and tears were streaming down my cheeks at the very end of the film about you. Oh my God, so much to say. Thank you. Thank you, Sally Kempton, for walking among us. We need your help. We need your bliss freak. We need your wisdom. We need your laughter. We need your joy, and we need your willingness to wrestle with loneliness, to wrestle with the traumas, to wrestle with the demons, because you wrestled with the demons, and even into the last years, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, you wrestled with the demons, and you always came out on the side of love. Cha. You know, as the day ended yesterday, which was a very, very, very heart-rending, heart-opening, and beautiful day where we did the first Sally Kempton memorial, Dharma talk, eulogy. And, you know, Christine and I, in the evening, want just to do something to just feel Sally and her era, what, you know, her life journey. the transformations that it went through. And so it was late and we were tired. We had been working on a project. So we decided to find a 60s movie of that era, which was about Helen Reddy. It was a biopic from Australia, 2019, which was the Helen Reddy I Am Woman song. And by the way, I recommend the biopic if just because the actress is phenomenal. And you just feel, as Helen Reddy finds that space of I am woman, and sings the song and brings it into culture, right? I was there and, KK can attest, I just literally broke down crying, just the goddess, right? I've always been privileged, right, to in any way be in devotion, right, in devotion to she, in devotion to the goddess. And as Helen Reddy, and that was Sally's time. They were in New York at the same time. They were part of the same circle. It was part of the same unimaginable emergence of the feminine, right? What Luria calls aliyat hanukva, right? The ascent of the feminine. And since then, I personally have gone through many stages of thinking and holding and feeling into what that ascent means. And of course, the feminine lives in the embodied she, but it also lives in all of us, right? We've talked many times the circle quality, the feminine quality, the Shakti quality lives in the body of a woman in a particular way, but it lives in the body of a man, right? We're all line and circle, Shiva and Shakti, Shekhinah in Kutchabrichu, in the language of the tree of life of Kabbalah. And so I was feeling into kind of watching with KK this I Am Woman song, in a haze of tears, right, at the ways in which we've lost the feminine, the ways in which the feminine has been hurt, right, has been degraded and defaced over thousands of years, and the ways that she's been honored, right, and held. And I was thinking particularly about Sally's journey as we alluded to it in yesterday's memorial service. So I wanted just to add a thought. If you notice when Dick Cavett asks Sally, "Can I light your cigarette?" and she says no, and they have this funny exchange, and then Sally says in a very, very serious way, I want to live in a world where there's no necessity for seduction, right? There's no need, for seducing. And so that was kind of the beginning. And the actual more subtle play between men and women, right? The autonomy and the allurement, the surrender, right? And the individuation. That play was one that hadn't been well articulated. So the funny line in that Dick Cavett interview is when Susan Brownmiller says, you have conversations with, very, very smart, powerful women. And Cavett says, that's just because I like to be dominated. And the whole place erupts in laughter because he's pointing to this subtle play in the space between men and women that hasn't been articulated clearly. And then after watching the movie that Jamie and Shahat made about Sally, we then did a eulogy in Sally's words, which was the teaching in Kashmir Shaivism that emerges really strongly. Its roots are earlier, but in the 13th century to the 16th century, in parallel to the emergence in Kabbalah of the Zohar to Luria, 13th to 16th century, which is the teaching of Krishna and Radha. And we noticed yesterday that the Krishna and Radha teaching is all about seduction. Right? It's all about seduction being this fundamental quality of cosmos, the experience of being so deeply in love that all I want is to have my beloved cross the boundary of her contraction and open to me. And of course, we distinguished between what we call unholy seduction, when I go to seduce the beloved to break their appropriate boundary for the sake of my greed, that's unholy seduction. But we've exiled, and that's what Sally was talking about in the Dick Cavett show. On the Dick Cavett show, Sally was talking about unholy seduction. But then as she moved beyond that stage of her life, right, in her mid-20s, which was in that beautiful 66, 67, and then she went and went deep into the world of profound study with a profound teacher in a deep lineage of Kashmir Shaivism. She began to realize, and I'll use my language, that we've exiled seduction to its unholy form, but that we need to liberate seduction, but not seduction in its unholy form, but seduction in the form of, we always want to seduce each other to our highest. But holy seduction is we seduce each other in mad love to break the inappropriate boundary of our contraction, right? The boundary of our smallness. And we call each other to our greatness. There's that great poem by Hafiz, which is, I see that you have amnesia, right? You're an elephant, right? Pretending, right, to be, right? But actually, you're the divine lover herself, right? So this calling from our holy amnesia and this recovering of the memory of our true nature is what seduction is, right? I love you so much that I call you to your gorgeousness. And then when you step out of your narrow boundary and you step into your fullness, you step into your beauty, and then perhaps you'll open that beauty to me and you'll invite me to open that beauty to you. Something happens in the depth of devotion, right? That is the very intention of reality's manifestation. It's so intensely beautiful. And I was feeling, this morning, that if you really chart it, you actually see something very beautiful. That you have, in some sense, kind of the pre-tragic world, kind of level 1 seduction, in which seduction is exactly the kind of seduction that Sally was saying we don't need in the world. We need to move beyond. It's when the woman, and it's what she was referring to, when the woman is forced for the sake of her survival to seduce. But seduce, I don't mean sexually. To seduce means I got to put on the right makeup and look the right way and play the right part, right, in order to survive. And that was an evolutionary mechanism for a very long time. And Sally was saying enough, right? Enough, right? We need to move beyond that first level, right? That level 1 of loving to level 2. And in level 2, Sally's describing this relationship, which is not this submission, but submission means I submit to my role as woman and I have to seduce you. And that's the expectation, right? And all of its distressing disguises. But level 2 is no, now we're partners. Now we're partners. Now we're equal partners, and we're engaged kind of intellectually, and we're in this kind of 50-50, appropriate, right, exchange. We've removed, right, that element of eros and of seduction of those forms, and we're meeting, in this fullness of our mutuality, which is necessary and sacred, right, and important, and it's the next stage. So we move from the pre-tragic to this next stage, but this next stage has something tragic in it, and the tragic is the loss of the living, breathing eros, of the heartbreak and heart opening, of the heart ecstasy, right, and the heart explosion of great love. And great love, right, not in its narrow form, but in its widest, most stunning form, right? Mad devotion, right? Outrageous love, as we call it. Awake in a flame as the beloveds turn towards each other, right, is the very intention of reality. And so then Sally moves from that middle place, which she's describing in the Dick Cavett show, to the tragic, the utter rejection of that flame of Eros. It doesn't have a place because it's been too abused and too misappropriated. There's no place for that in the world. She moves to level 3, which is the post-tragic. In the frame of the Baal Shem Tov, the master of the Hasidic movement, the first level is hachna'ah, submission. I submit to my role. That's what I have to do. I'm the seducer. That's how I survive. And then the feminine becomes furious with that role, right? And she becomes angry. And we get to the second role, and it's balanced and it's appropriate and it's mutual, but there's a bitterness on both the male side and the female side because we can't live in the world when we're not madly in love, right? Right? To live in a world and not be madly in love, the suffering becomes unbearable. The world is filled with outrageous pain. The world is filled with unbearable suffering. And it's only the experience of being madly in love which clarifies my vision. And it's the tears of mad love which purify my heart and allow me to live and to see and to act and to create. And so we move from the tragic to the post-tragic. The Baal Shem Tov calls the second level of the tragic havdalah, separation. And we're still in the relationship. We're still in mutuality. We're still whatever the relationship is, but there's a separation. I'm separated from myself, my true nature. I'm separated from reality, the inner nature of reality. I'm separated from the beloved. And then we go to the third level, the post-tragic, which is hamtaka. And hamtaka means radical sweetness. It's the post-tragic, but it's not of the saccharine kind. It's not a saccharine kind of superficial sweetness, but it is the experience that every moment reality is seducing me. And every moment reality is waiting for me to seduce reality. And in every conversation, we're seducing each other to our highest, to our most beautiful, right? That desire and devotion merge. Desire in all of its levels, desire to create, desire to give, desire to be in radical amazement, desire for precision, desire for insight, desire for gifting, desire for tenderness, desire for quivering aliveness, right? All of it, right? Desire and devotion merge. I'm at this higher level where I'm committed to always seduce you, like she, the goddess, is committed to always seduce us. She sends us the depth of the color blue, right? And we look into the blue and she's seducing us. She sends us, I look out the window, right? Right, KK, we look out the window here and I see the dance of the tree and the blue and the green and the brightness and the clarity of the day, right? As we sit here and we record and Krista's with us and we're just dazzled by the sunlight. And she's seducing us. She's seducing us. She's seducing us in every second, right? Every taste, water in my mouth, an orange as I peel it, right? The ability to feel the ripple of communion that moves between people, an idea clarifies in our mind. She's seducing us in every second. That's actually the true experience of reality. She's reaching for us. She's HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitaveh, the Shekhinah. She, the goddess, lusts. Mitaveh, she lusts. Lasot dira b'tachtonim, to seduce us into mad desire and devotion as we kind of emerge, explode into our irreducibly gorgeous uniqueness, and then unfold the vector of our unique seductions. We seduce reality to our highest. We create. We create. We're the entrepreneurial expressions of the universe's seductions, right? We seduce reality, each other, ourselves, to our highest. And actually, all creativity, all science, all entrepreneurship, all invention, all activism, all intellectual work, all teaching, all studying, all studenting, it's all seduction, right? In its most holy And in the most beautiful sense, it's alive. And in that, that's the post-tragic. We have to allow ourselves to be heartbroken because our hearts get broken again and again. And we have to be able to live in the unbearable suffering of reality. But the unbearable suffering becomes in and of itself unbearably sweet when we step out of the narrow contraction of our self-boundary, where we wallow in sense of being kind of perpetually hurt and perpetually offended and perpetually hypersensitive expressions of victimization and hyper recursive loops, reviewing the places that we've been injured and offended again and again 40 years later. Right? That happens. We get lost in that way when we're not seduced beyond that. And the only way to deal, the only way to engage the outrageous pain of my life is to love madly. It's to love madly. Ordinary love won't do it. That's the Krishna Radha realization. Ordinary love doesn't do it. It's only outrageous love. It's only this mad, wild love where I step out of myself and I love you, right? You, she, the goddess, she, the color blue, she, the dazzling sunlight, right? She, the animal that moves across my path, that looks me in the eyes, she, right? My many beloveds, right? From the mailman, right? To the clerk, right? To the waiter, to the waitress, all of it, right? If I'm not madly in love, I'm insane. I can't bear reality. I'm out of alignment with reality. Right? The only sanity, which is the only alignment with the reality in which I feel welcome and at home in the universe, is when I love insanely. Right? That's Krishna Radha. That's a world that's filled, right, with seduction. And we can only, it's we said yesterday, we can only step into a meta crisis. We can only step into the outrageous pain of it through Krishna Radha, through outrageous love, through all of the heartbreak and all of the pain that opens up. My heart breaks and then my heart opens. And that's the tantric principle of non-rejection, right? That experience, that feeling is not a mistake of evolutionary psychology. It's not that evolutionary psychology kind of developed this human notion of love, which is how evolutionary psychology reads the story. Evolutionary psychology says that love is this unique human invention that is an expression, a social construction of a materialist universe. No, actually, outrageous love is the very nature of reality itself. And so I have to cast out remorse. And it's those lines from Yeats that Sally loved so much, right? When such as I cast out remorse, so great is sweetness. That's level 3. That's the post-tragic. That's the non-dual incarnation in my unique life of wild Krishna Radha, ecstatic, outrageous love. When such as I cast out remorse, so great a sweetness fills my breast. We can dance and we can sing. We're blessed by everything. And then we respond to the meta crisis, right? And he concludes the poet, and everything we look upon is blessed, right? So that was just some thoughts as Kik and I were watching Helen Reddy, right? I am woman, I am strong, right? I'm broken and I'm shattered, I'm heartbroken, and I'm invincible. And it's that energy of revolution. It's that energy of possibility. It's that energy of radical activism. Evolution as love in action, right? That is the sense that we wanted to convey for Sally at her memorial. So thanks for listening. Just a couple more minutes in mad love. And here's a little postscript on the postscript. And it's beautiful to clarify love. To clarify love is to participate in the evolution of love. So in some sense, what we're understanding is that there's a pre-tragic Krishna Radha, a tragic Krishna and Radha, and a post-tragic Krishna and Radha. The pre-tragic Krishna and Radha is when we turn to love in all of its impossibilities. And we try and love anyways. And we somehow think that it's going to work out in a particular way, and that it's going to feel a particular way, and it's going to look a particular way. And we reach for impossibilities, and we break all the rules, thinking that somehow it's going to come together and be that white picket fence that we thought it would be. So we're in the pre-tragic reaching, where we think that within this lifetime, that picture perfect dream that we had as the fulfillment of our fantasy of loving will inevitably be fulfilled. And that's this pre-tragic moment. And it's rooted in the field of what we would call ordinary love, right? This is we call ordinary love in the Dharma of cosmologic humanism, the ordinary love that lives between human beings, which of course is not ordinary at all. It's unique and spectacular and beautiful, but it's ordinary in that we understand it in the classical forms of, for example, evolutionary psychology. It's a particular emergent or a social construction of the human world, and it's filled with, pathos and beauty, and it's essentially pre-tragic form. But of course, what happens is Krishna and Radha very rapidly becomes tragic. We dream of a possibility that can't be fulfilled. Our hearts are shattered. We open our hearts so wide, right, in expectation of a particular result. And when that result doesn't happen, then our hearts hurt so achingly. We're so devastated by the tragic that our hearts actually close. And very often a person's heart never opens again. They open their heart so wide, it's so insanely painful that we have to contract, we have to close, and we've met the tragic. Krishna and Radha hasn't fulfilled itself. The white picket fence didn't reveal itself. And we're dashed against the embankments, the sharp, angular, painful embankments of the tragic. And we feel shattered. And we somehow, with bubblegum, try and piece our lives and our hearts back together, but we never quite succeed, and our hearts close, and we never experience that sense of aliveness, that sense of yearning, that sense of sweetness, that sense of possibility, that sense of unimaginable, unutterable, unbearable joy. And that's the tragic. And that's where most people live. And that's the tragic of ordinary love. And then there's a place. And then there's a place, there's a possibility, there's a portal, right? There's a poignancy, there's a potency, there's a promise that lives at the edges of the tragic, which is elicited by this deepening of love itself, where I begin to realize that love is not a coincidence of evolutionary psychology generating a social construction. It's not that. It's not that at all. I realize that love's not only a human sentiment, and it's more than just a sentiment, it's the sentience of cosmos itself. Love's not a mere human sentiment. Love is the sentience. It's the nature of reality itself. Love is the heart of existence itself. And it is the animating force of all of reality. Right? It's not love in its ordinary love sense. It's the eros. It's the eros value of reality. It's reality experiencing its own radical aliveness, reality desiring ever deeper contact, reality desiring new wholeness. Right? That quality of eros, right, is outrageous love. And when I love outrageously, my heart breaks again and again, but when my heart breaks, it breaks open. It doesn't break closed. It breaks good, it doesn't break bad. Right? Shever, right? The word for the shattering, the breaking. It's the breaking of the vessels that opens up reality to a possibility that was unimaginable before. It was unimaginable before, right? The crisis of the broken heart becomes a driver of new love. Our crisis births a new heart and a new possibility and a new poignancy and a new depth and a new sweetness. So we've moved into outrageous love, in which I become, I embody, I am the generous radiance of reality living uniquely through me. And it's both most personal, it's most intimate and personal, and yet it's also the personate of all of reality flowing through me. And there's a depth to that, a goodness to that, a truth to that, a beauty to that, which opens me into the post-tragic. Now I'm Krishna and Radha at the post-tragic. Now the personal shattering and the personal heart opening participate in the larger field, right? My personal desire participates in the field of desire. I realize there's no local desire. I realize that the pulse of desire and devotion living in me are the pulse of desire and devotion, which is she reaching, yearning for me, right? In every second. It's the post-tragic Krishna and Radha. And that move, that evolution of consciousness that takes place through the Krishna and Radha archetype, the Krishna and Radha incarnation, is the evolution of she. It's the evolution of love. It's the evolution of Eros. And that's what we're reaching for, right? That's what we know to be true. And that's what we were pointing towards. And it's very deeply, I think, what Sally was pointing to, right, in her teaching on Krishna and Radha, which we shared yesterday. Okay, so that was the postscript on the postscript. And I promise there's not a postscript on the postscript's postscript. Yay. Now I know we promised that there's no way that we would have the temerity, the audacity, the chutzpah, if we can borrow that word, to have a postscript on the postscript on the postscript, but we lied. So here it is. And just so we can kind of hold this, to kind of take it the last step. What we've been saying in these postscripts, what Sally is saying in her chapter on Krishna and Radha, what we're saying in the teaching of outrageous love, is that this is the ultimate path of self-realization. This is the path to awakening. This is the path to maturity. This is the path to my full humanity, which is my full divinity. That's what we meant when we said a couple of postscripts ago that the tantric principle of non-rejection is pointing to something. It's saying this is the most searing, the most radically amazing, the most ecstatic, erotic, the most radically alive human experience. And that's not a coincidence. That's not a coincidence of evolutionary psychology. That's what the lineage would call itaruta de le'ela, right? It's arousal from above. It courses through me. That sense of the gift of it coursing through me, is what the Greeks were talking about when they portrayed Cupid's arrow hitting you. But it wasn't the arbitrary arrow of a cherubic God who was bored. It's actually the radical gift of she. It's arousal from above. It's this gift that courses through me, that dashes me right against the rocks, and that yet holds me right closer than close in every second, no distance. That experience, which is at the very core of human existence, is, of course, the hidden path. That's the hidden path. Right? I think that path is tragic. No, I go from tragic to post-tragic when I realize that radical, heart-rending, heart-agonizing, heart-ecstatic, heart bliss is the path itself. You see? So the tradition said, stay away from that. Right? Stay away from that. That's dangerous. And we should stay away from the obsessive versions, the shadow versions of it, of course. But Chung Sa wasn't wrong when he said, I come to speak dangerous words. I ask only that you listen dangerously. Right? That's this realization that to go the whole way in this lifetime, if we can cite Sally and my dear friends, all of our dear friend, Barbara, to go the whole way in this lifetime is to risk it all. And to risk it all means to risk my heart again and again, which I can't do from the place of ordinary love. Why would I risk my heart again and again? I'll fall, I'll be killed, I'll die. I can't bear it. But in the field of outrageous love, in the Chakil Tapuchin Kadishan, the field of holy apples, the field of Eros value, the only thing to do is to open my heart again and again and again, and to keep receiving that gift of arousal from above. You see, when I'm willing to open my heart again, she, capital she opens her heart again and again and pours into me unimaginable power. Shakti is power in Kashmir Shaivism. Sally always taught that. It's correct. Shakti is power. She pours into me unimaginable Shakti, unimaginable power. And it's that power which transforms my essence, my personal. And it's that power that's the only true one heart of the political that transforms reality. Like that. Okay. And it's only by not turning away from the Krishna and Radha depth of my own life. It's only by not turning away from the heartbreak and heart opening of the Krishna and Radha in my life that I actually find my way. That arousal from above is an invitation to my unique self, to my irreducible uniqueness, to my unique tikkun. The word tikkun means the unique way in which I make love to the divine, in which I evolve God, in which I give my gift and live the life that's mine to live. Every place you've been, you needed to be. My Krishna and Radha dynamic, my Krishna and Radha aliveness is not a coincidence of cosmos. It's the intimate communion of she. It's the invitation to my life. It's the place not where I should turn away. It's the place where I turn towards.